Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Unrest Bhattacharya. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar announces a $450 million reconstruction package for Sri Lanka to support the island nation in its recovery. US President Donald Trump says the United States needs Greenland for national security, citing growing Russian and Chinese presence in the Arctic region. US seizes 2 oil tankers linked to the Venezuelan government in international waters. Trump asks Maduro to step down. And in sports, Indian women's cricket team to play their second T20 international with Sri Lanka in Visakhapatnam today. Underscoring India's steadfast solidarity with Sri Lanka in the aftermath of the adverse weather conditions caused by Cyclone Ditwa, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, who was on a visit to Sri Lanka, announced a $450 million reconstruction package for Sri Lanka to support the island nation in its recovery.
We had a detailed discussion on the damage caused by Cyclone Ditwa. Commits a reconstruction package of US $450 million to Sri Lanka. Our talks centered around how expeditiously this commitment can be delivered.
Giving opening remarks in Colombo alongside his Sri Lankan counterpart Vijitha Herath, the minister reiterated India's strong resolve to support the people of Sri Lanka. He said that India stands firmly with Sri Lanka more than ever before.
India's relief and assistance mission, Operation Sagar Bandhu, commenced on the very day that Cyclone Ditwa made landfall. Our aircraft carrier, INS Vikrant, and another ship, INS Udaygiri, were present at Colombo and delivered relief materials and thereafter also deployed helicopters.
India has committed to a reconstruction package of $450 million to Sri Lanka, covering rehabilitation and restoration of road, railway and bridge connectivity, construction of houses fully destroyed and partially damaged, support for health and education sectors, in particular those that have been damaged by the cyclone, agriculture including to address possible shortages in the short and medium term, and better disaster response and preparedness. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met Sri Lankan President Anura Kumara Dasanaike in Colombo on Tuesday, conveying Prime Minister Narendra Modi's warm wishes and India's message of solidarity in the aftermath of Cyclone Ditwa. Dr. Jaishankar also held talks with Sri Lanka's Prime Minister Harini Amarasuriya, reaffirming India's steadfast commitment to supporting Sri Lanka's rebuilding efforts. He said the reconstruction package offered by India reflects the deep bonds of friendship and cooperation between the two nations. Dr. S. Jaishankar, along with his Sri Lankan counterpart, jointly inaugurated a 120-foot dual carriageway Bailey Bridge in the Kilinochchi district of Northern Province, one of the areas severely affected by Cyclone Ditwa. The 110 tons bridge was airlifted from India and installed as part of Operation Sagar Bandhu. Dr. Jaishankar also met Sri Lankan Health Minister Nalinda Jayatissa, Labour and Deputy Finance Minister Anil Jayanta and Deputy Tourism Minister Ruvan Ranasinghe. He reiterated India's full support for Sri Lanka's recovery and rebuilding efforts in the aftermath of Cyclone Ditwa. The discussions focused on the implementation of the reconstruction package offered by India and additional relief measures. Dr. S. Jaishankar also met Sri Lanka's leader of opposition, Sajith Premadasa, in Colombo on Tuesday. The two leaders discussed India's proposed reconstruction package to support Sri Lanka in the aftermath of Cyclone Ditwa. During his visit, Dr. Jaishankar also interacted with members of the Indian business community based in Sri Lanka and applauded their efforts in extending relief and assistance to those affected by the cyclone. Later in the day, Dr. Jaishankar also interacted with Sri Lankan Tamil leaders, underlining India's continued commitment to reconstruction and rehabilitation efforts. US President Donald Trump has said the United States needs Greenland for national security, citing growing Russian and Chinese presence in the Arctic region. He implied Greenland is needed for national protection and economic development, not for minerals, as he appoints Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry as a special envoy to Greenland. The move draws criticism from Denmark and Greenland over Washington's growing interest in the mineral-rich Arctic island. Here's a report.
President Donald Trump reasserted on Monday that the United States needs Greenland to become part of the United States. He named Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry as a special envoy to Greenland, drawing renewed criticism from Denmark and Greenland together.
We need Greenland for national protection. They have a very small population. And I don't know, they say Denmark, but Denmark has spent no money. We need Greenland for national security. Not for minerals. And if you take a look at Greenland, you look up and down the coast, you have Russian and Chinese ships all over the place.
Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen and Greenland's Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen earlier said in a joint statement that Greenland belongs to Greenlanders. Nielsen followed with a rather terse comment on social media. He said that the announcement of an envoy may sound big, but does not change anything on the ground. Greenlanders will decide their future. Denmark summoned American ambassador for a meeting together with the Greenlandic representative and asked for an explanation. Support from the European Union was also quick and firm.
Preserving the territorial integrity of the Kingdom of Denmark, its sovereignty and the inviolability of its borders is essential for the European Union.
Trump has advocated for Greenland, a self-governing Danish territory, to become part of the United States, citing its strategic importance and mineral resources. Bureau Report, DD India.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen stressed that Arctic security remains a key priority for the European Union after US President Donald Trump renewed his call to take over Greenland, provoking strong reactions from Denmark and the EU. The EU chief stressed that territorial integrity and sovereignty are fundamental principles of international law, which are essential not only for the European Union but for nations around the world. Greenland, a former Danish colony, became an integral part of the Kingdom of Denmark in 1953. It was granted home rule in 1979, expanding its autonomy, though Denmark retains authority over foreign affairs and defense. The United States and Venezuela are edging closer to a serious diplomatic confrontation after the U.S. seized 2 oil tankers linked to the Venezuelan government in international waters, with a third now under pursuit. U.S. President Donald Trump issued a fresh warning to Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, saying it would be smart for Maduro to step down as tension escalates between the two leaders.
The U.S. military said it struck a vessel suspected of carrying drugs in international waters in the eastern Pacific Ocean on Monday, killing 1 person, part of a months-long campaign of boat strikes near Latin America. The military has hit at least 29 alleged drug vessels since early September, killing 105 people. United States President Donald Trump levied his latest threat as the U.S. Coast Guard continued for a second day to chase a third oil tanker as part of a dark fleet that Venezuela uses to evade U.S. sanctions. The U.S. president also promised to keep the 2 ships and the nearly 4 million barrels of Venezuelan oil the Coast Guard has seized so far. Trump suggested he was prepared to further ratchet up the tensions after 4 months of mounting pressure on Caracas. He also issued a new warning to Nicolas Maduro, saying it would be smart for the Venezuelan leader to step down as U.S. naval forces pressed a blockade on the South American country's oil wealth.
Well, I think it probably would. I can't tell. That's up to him what he wants to do. I think it would be smart for him to do that. But again, we're going to find out. Look, Venezuela did terrible things to the United States. They sent hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people into our open border. They sent their criminals, they sent their prisoners, they sent their drug dealers, they sent their mentally insane and incompetent people.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro hit back, saying the US president would be better off focusing on domestic issues rather than threatening Caracas.
I've been reflecting in recent days on the illegal aggressions that have occurred. I think that President Trump could do better in his country and in the world. He would do better within his country with economic and social issues. He would do better with the world if he attended to the issues of his country, each president to their own, because it cannot be that 70% of his speeches, declarations, and time is about Venezuela.
Venezuela's key ally Moscow, however, expressed its full support for Maduro's government as Washington has dialed up military operations and threats against Caracas. China also condemned the US's latest moves as a serious violation of international law. Venezuela denies any involvement in drug trafficking and insists that Washington is seeking to overthrow Maduro to seize the country's oil reserves, which are the world's largest. Anamika Pandey's report for DD India.
US President Donald Trump on Monday announced plans to build a new Trump class of battleships that he said would be larger, faster, and 100 times more powerful than the biggest of any previous American-built warships. Speaking in Florida, Trump said the battleships would be part of a larger vision to create what he called a golden fleet that would help ensure US naval dominance. He said the project would begin with the construction of 2 such battleships and eventually be expanded to encompass 20 to 25 new vessels. Trump added he will meet next week with major defense contractors to address what he described as slow production schedules.
Battleships are the largest, sturdiest, and most heavily armed vessel built specifically for naval combat. While America has built many new warships over the years, they've tended to be smaller and much smaller, and not conducive to where we are and where we're going, and peace through strength. These cutting-edge vessels will be some of the most lethal surface warfare ships. It will be actually the most ever built other than our submarines. We have submarines which will have, in many ways, even more lethality, and we have many of them under construction.
At least 8,000 new documents related to the case of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein were available on Tuesday on the U.S. Department of Justice site. The DOJ has been accused of withholding information and was criticized by Democrats over the slow release and heavy redaction of records from the investigation into Epstein. The new files include hundreds of videos or audio recordings, notably surveillance footage from August 2019, the month Epstein was found dead in his jail cell while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. The Department of Justice posted around 11,000 links to new documents online, but some of them appeared to lead nowhere. Inquilab Moncho, one of the prominent platforms that rose during the July uprising in Bangladesh on Monday, warned of launching a mass movement to oust the current interim government of the country if justice is not delivered in the killing of its leader, Osman Hadi, last week. The warning came from the platform's member secretary, Abdullah Al-Jaber, at an emergency press conference held at Shaheed Hadi Chattar in Dhaka. He said a 24-hour ultimatum issued during Hadi's namaz-e-janaza had expired without any visible action from the Home Advisor or law enforcement agencies to arrest the accused. Jaber accused the authorities of negligence and evasion of responsibility, alleging that the absence of key advisors at official briefings showed a lack of seriousness over the murder. Announcing a protest procession and further street programs, Inquilab Moncho said it would decide whether to continue supporting the interim government or initiate a movement to oust it, reiterating its resolve to remain mobilized until justice is delivered. Sharif Osman Hadi was shot at close range on December 12th. He was airlifted to Singapore by air ambulance for advanced treatment but later died. Following his death, protests broke out in Dhaka as the supporters of the Inquilab Moncho called for justice for the slain leader. Hadi was also being considered as a potential Dhaka 8 candidate for the February 2026 national election. Following the mob lynching of Deepu Chandra Das and other youth in Bangladesh, members of Vishwa Hindu Parishad held massive protests outside the Bangladesh High Commission in Delhi. Heavy security was deployed near the Bangladesh High Commission to monitor and control the situation. The protesters demanded accountability from Bangladeshi authorities, with some calling for justice and protection of minorities. Members of the Prasar Bharati Hindi Bengali Sangathan (VHP) and Bajrang Dal participated in a protest near the Durgabai Deshmukh South Campus metro station, raising slogans about Bangladesh's Hindus and their security. Deepu Chandra Das was beaten to death by a mob over alleged blasphemy, and his body was subsequently set on fire on 18th December. Still to come on this edition of DD India Live. Russia attacks Kyiv and Ukraine's energy infrastructure, triggering emergency outages. Cambodia and Thailand to hold talks on resuming ceasefire as fighting enters the third week. You're watching DD India Live. Moving on to updates now on the Russia-Ukraine situation. Russia attacked Kyiv and Ukraine's energy infrastructure early on Tuesday, triggering emergency outages and prompting NATO member Poland to scramble jets to protect its airspace 2 days after US-led Miami peace talks ended. The weekend peace talks in Miami brought together US officials with Ukrainian and European delegations alongside separate contacts with Russian representatives as Washington tested whether there was scope for a settlement to end Russia's conflict in Ukraine. Ukraine's energy ministry said emergency power outages were introduced in a number of regions, including Kyiv and the surrounding region, after Russia again attacked energy facilities. Russia has repeatedly hit Ukraine's power grid and energy facilities during the nearly 4-year conflict, intensifying strikes in winter to disrupt electricity and heating, strain logistics and the economy, and increase pressure on Kyiv. Also, Poland, a NATO member bordering western Ukraine, said Polish and allied aircraft were deployed to protect Polish airspace after Russian strikes targeted areas of western Ukraine near the border. China on Tuesday urged the United States to fulfill its nuclear disarmament responsibilities after a draft Pentagon report claimed that China has likely deployed more than 100 intercontinental ballistic missiles and is unwilling to engage in arms control talks. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian stated at a press briefing that the United States should create conditions for other nuclear-armed countries to pursue disarmament, and added that China does not engage in nuclear arms races with any nation.
As the superpower with the largest nuclear arsenal, the United States must, as a matter of urgency, earnestly fulfill its special responsibility in nuclear disarmament and create conditions for other nuclear weapon states to join the nuclear disarmament process. China firmly adheres to its policy of not being the first to use nuclear weapons. It does not engage in a nuclear arms race with any other country.
Thailand and Cambodia agreed to hold a December 24 meeting of defense officials towards resuming a months-old ceasefire as fierce border fighting between them entered a third week, with at least 80 people killed so far. Bangkok's defense chief on Tuesday sought to assuage any fears on the Cambodian side about the meeting taking place in Thailand, and the Thai Foreign Ministry said the venue was still being discussed. The nation's long-standing border conflict reignited this month, shattering an earlier truce, killing more than 40 people and displacing over 900,000 on both sides. Thai Foreign Minister Sihasak Phuang Ketkeo announced a parley with Cambodia after a meeting in the Malaysian capital with his counterparts from the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, of which Cambodia is also a member. Malaysia, the chair of the ASEAN regional bloc, had agreed to host the talks in the capital. Towards the end of the year, many countries are approaching Christmas, and for some, it's not only a spiritual holiday, but also peak shopping season. Lars Holter is with Deutsche Welle and joins me from Berlin now. Lars, what can you tell us about holiday shopping these days in Germany?
Thanks for having me. Well, let's look at the positive side first. Walking through Berlin these days is beautiful. You have all the stores decked out for the season. There's little lights everywhere. Some over-the-top displays too, including Santa Claus figures that are as tall as a building. There's lots of music playing and it's quite festive. Also, we have the little Christmas markets here where people hang out socially and buy Christmas presents too. But looking behind the scenes, the situation is not quite as jolly, and German retailers are quite unhappy with the holiday shopping season so far. In a new survey, only 23% of retailers said that business is good, and a full 62% said they're not satisfied and that revenues are lower than expected. And a speaker for the retail trade group says that clearly the general bad consumer mood can be felt throughout.
Also, Lars, with the consumer sentiment now weakened, what are you expecting for the new year?
For 2026, we're actually seeing a bit more optimism, not too much, however. Here's the thing. The German government has been putting up massive investment packages to support the economy. They've done so last year already with a 500 billion euro package, each to be invested in the military and defense, as well as in infrastructure. Now in 2026, many economists are expecting the biggest bang for the buck spend here. So we're seeing some in the industry becoming more optimistic now after 3 years between recession and stagnation. However, it's absolutely clear that the main problems that have been plaguing the economy are still around and will be for a while. That is competition from China and its tariffs and an unfriendly trade and business environment in the US. So with all the optimism we're seeing for next year, we should be aware that some problems remain in 2026 and any growth we will see might be hampered.
Thanks, Lars, for those updates. President Draupadi Murmu on Tuesday conferred the Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar 2025 at a function held at Rashtrapati Bhavan in New Delhi. This is the nation's highest recognition for exceptional contributions in the fields of science, technology and innovation. The awards were given under 4 categories, including Vigyan Ratna, Vigyan Shri, Vigyan Yuva Shanti Swaroop Bhatnagar and Vigyan Team. Padma Vibhushan Professor Jayant Vishnu Narikar has been honoured with the Vigyan Ratna Award posthumously. 8 scientists were conferred with the Vigyan Shri Award and 14 young scientists were awarded under the Vigyan Yuva category, while the Vigyan Team Award was given to Team Aroma Mission CSIR. After cruising to a comprehensive win in the opener, Indian women will now look to tighten their grip on the 5-match T20 International Series when they take on Sri Lanka in the second game in Visakhapatnam on Tuesday. India wrapped up the chase in just 14.4 overs in the first T20 International. Jemima Rodriguez struck an unbeaten 69 to guide India to an 8-wicket win. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka needs more support from their top and middle order. Vishmi, Harshita and Hasani all showed their brief intent in the first T20 but struck at under a run a ball. Skipper Atapattu said after the loss that 121 was well below par and conceded that Sri Lanka played overly defensive, with conditions set to remain similar before the series moves to Thiruvananthapuram. India will start as favourites again, while Sri Lanka searches for consistency. That's it in this edition of DD India Live, but do share your thoughts with us on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. You can scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. This is Munal Bhattacharya from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live. Namaskar.